Next up, we have Léa from Everoad. So here she is.
Hi. I will just connect the presentation. No, didn't work. And so I don't know. Sorry. Merci Sanka. So hi everyone, I am super happy to be here. When the team of Trainline and BlaBlaCar told me about Transport Transformers event, I was super exciting. And also I was super impressed because Trainline and BlaBlaCar are so huge and we at Everoad are so small, so tiny. We are just a young startup, so I was really impressed. I am still impressed. But I will do my best to speak clearly in English. Sorry for my accent. I will try to be understandable. And if you don't understand me, well, raise your head and ask me to repeat. So my name is Léa Mendes Da Silva. I am head of design at Everoad, and I will talk with you about building a branding system, a brand identity system. This is a huge topic for us. We are focus on this topic since 1 year, with many also other projects. And well, I will just give you a bit of context, and I will tell you the story of our brand identity system and why I'm not talking about just design system or just about branding. So just to give you a bit of context. Everoad is a startup. We are 2 years old. We raised 16 million euros last year, and we are today something like 80 people. And we are a freight forwarder, which means that we connect shippers with carriers, companies who have merchandise to send all around Europe, with companies who have trucks and so can carry their merchandise. So we have a platform, and we do matching. So my story starts 1 year ago when I just joined the company. They hired me mostly to be focused on the UX. I am a T profile, which means that I can do illustration, I can do a bit of visual design, I can do user interface design, but my main skill is the user experience, and also I'm focused on Lean UX methodologies, so how can we build workflows and process that allow you to improve your user experience on the project, but in a lean way, so to deliver faster and to work in a collaborative way with all your team, developers, designer, project managers, hand in hand. So I was supposed to start building the team and bringing some process to be focused on the user experience. But I was in the company since something like 1 week, and so I was discovering the wonderful universe of freight forwarding industry. And so Max, our founder, came to see me and say, "Oh yeah, you know what? We are about to raise 16 million euros. So last month we will announce this to the world. And by the way, we will change our name. So could you do just a quick logotype? And by the way, I don't really like the branding. So could you just change everything?" Simple. You have something like 3 weeks. No resources, of course, but you're a designer. You will do a great thing, I'm sure. And no money, but come on, you're creative, so do something. So 3 weeks, no money, no resources to build an entire rebranding. So I was completely freaking out, asking myself what I'm doing in this company. Challenge accepted, because I really enjoyed this kind of challenge, and I thought, if I can do something great, even if it's super small and super crafty, maybe in 1 year I will have a great story to tell, so you will tell me at the end if it was interesting. And because I am most a UX designer than a brand designer, and most a project designer than a brand designer, I decided to run this rebranding project like I do for any project design project. So I kept the famous steps with define, by the way, discovery before defining, of course, design and delivery phases. And so I made my war plan, and what I wanted to do firstly was to understand what were the problem. Why Convargo, our ex-identity, our ex-name, why Convargo wasn't good enough? What were our issues? I needed also to define our audience, because I was in the company since something like 1 week. So in fact, I didn't know at all who were our users, neither our customers. And I needed to define clearly our DNA, because we were so young, we were just 1 year at this moment, that we even didn't know who we were exactly. We didn't know what was our vision, our long-term vision. We didn't have any values or things like this. In fact, we just had a great founder. Everyone was believing in him, but that's all. So, yeah, sorry. So my target was to have, after the 3 weeks, before announcing to the world that we had changed our identity, to have at the minimum the basis, which means a logotype, the colors, the font, who would be enough to announce to the world, hey, we have changed our identity. And it should, I wanted it to be our basis to then build something scalable. I was alone, but I was supposed to bring a team at Everoad, so I thought, okay, I will just need the first bricks, and then the team will help me to build the wall. So let's start with the first step, the define phase. So this screen was what Convargo looked like at the first time. And when I joined the company, I didn't really understood why these interfaces were so painful. Because in fact, the UI designer, UI UX designer who was in the company before me was pretty good in UI design and pretty good in branding, better than I am. And I saw the mock-ups that he planned to build for the project, and I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed his work, so I really didn't understand. And then when I started to have feedbacks from the real users, the real customers, from the sales teams, from the people in the company, I discovered something that I didn't expect and that no one expected at the first time when they built the Convargo branding, is that our users perceived us, sorry for this lapsus, as newbies. They saw us as a newbie because our app was looking like all new app that you can find, for example, at eFounders, all the kind of interfaces that you can see on Dribble. It was respecting the trends, the 2017 trends. It was super light with a small light thin font in gray with light white backgrounds, beautiful pictures, etc. But in fact, in the freight forwarding industry, people are something like more than 45 years old, mostly in the companies. And also the freight forwarders are people who work daily on super old softwares. So they are used to work with very complex and huge interfaces. And when they saw something super wide, super light, super premium, they thought, these guys, they are not freight forwarders. They are just young people playing behind a desk and they don't know what they do. So finally they thought that we were newbie, we weren't reliable. And they thought also that we were complex because our audience are people who don't use the last iPhone. They don't work on a MacBook Pro. They are not used to use all the new social medias, etc. So looking at an application who looked so new, make them feel uncomfortable because they thought it's going to be super complex. And because we had premium interfaces, people thought that we would be super expensive also. So finally, we were thinking that we were building a super simple experience, delightful because it was super light, because we as startuppers, as people between 20 and 35 years old, young and liking digital, we thought it was super light, super smooth, delightful, and it was the absolute opposite. And the cherry on the cake, je pense pas que ça se dise, cherry on the cake was people see our project as inaccessible because the truckers, the freight forwarders, the carriers, the shippers, they work with low quality screens. And most of them are men, and men are much more touched by how to say that daltonism. I don't know, daltonism. I try. So I knew that we had something like 10% of the male user that we had who would not be able to read some of our screen, some of our informations. So some of our users couldn't read at all our interfaces. So the finality all over all of this was that people didn't remind us. Our branding wasn't memorable at all. So, okay, I was discovering all of this, and I was start to be aware that we had so many change so many things to change. But in the meantime, I didn't want to build an old school interfaces to build a super ugly software. So, where to start? So here, this is the moment you call Jake. So I don't know if you know this guy. This is Jake Knapp, and he's the one who made the book Design Sprints. So he's pretty good to help startups because he has 10 years old of experience at Google Venture, helping many startups to build their projects and build their identities and to try to work in a super lean way. So he likes workshops, and so he shared on Medium an article who is called the 3 Hours Branding Workshop. And this is pretty simple, and this is just 3 hours. And remember, at this moment, I just had 3 weeks to build an entire rebranding. So I knew what were our issues, but I didn't know nothing about freight forwarding, and also I didn't know nothing about what we wanted to build in terms of personality. So in this workshop, you focus with other stakeholders on your long-term vision, on the why. It means that you can easily say what you are doing. You can easily say how you do that. We were doing freight forwarding, how with a platform. But why are you doing this? Why are you waking up all the morning and coming to focus on the same project every day? What are you trying to solve? What are you building? Why are you doing this? So when you define this, you start to be able to define the soul, the DNA of the project that you are, or the branding that you are building. Of course, our values are super important. I know that it can sound like bullshit for many people, but in fact, when you know how to use it, it's super useful. And of course, mostly when you are UX designer, for me it was super important to know our audience. And finally, in this workshop, you focus on personality sliders. What does it mean? It means that for the why, for example, why are we building Everoad? Because what we want to do is make the life of shippers and carriers easier through technology while protecting our planet. Okay, I know how it sounds, but in fact, when you look at this, you know that you have to focus on shippers as carriers, and so we have to focus on the both, and it's super important. We know also that we don't need to care about the project interface. What is more important is the experience that we will deliver, which means these people, they work daily with many super painful tasks. And our mission is to help them to don't have so many painful tasks to do. So we cannot build another new project with another new horrible interaction to do. We cannot ask them to relearn another way to work. We are here to help them to work better. So this is our mission. And when you know that, you know how to focus on your project. And when we talk about protecting our planet in the freight forwarding industry, it means you have to build a project that will be more intelligent, because we have many trucks who are on the roads and they are empty. This is horrible in terms of pollution. This is horrible in terms of economy for our users. So how can we use the data? How can we use the product? How can we use the interaction to make their daily work easier, and also to make the freight forwarding more smarter, just smarter. So this is our audience, and when you are focused on our audience, here you try to you can understand all the issues that we had before. Firstly, with our Convargo branding, is that we have shippers and carriers in big and small companies. Since then, we have other personnel who joined the family, but this force, they were the first that we had. And Vincent, Christine, Bruno, Michel, these people, they exist for real. I mean, this is personas, but the people they represent are real. And these people are, for Vincent and Bruno, people who work daily on super complex and super huge softwares, so they won't have the time to learn a new application. They also already have many complex processes. They already have a way to see the branding, to interpret the branding. And for Vincent, Bruno, Michel, they are all super expert in terms of freight forwarding. So when these guys saw us as a young startup, you can be sure that they will never sign to work with us. So we knew that the people we have to convince that we are freight expert was this guy. And this guy, they don't work with a cool application on their iPhone. They even don't have an iPhone. Most of them are on Android. So finally, what about the personality in the workshop? We discovered, talking with all the stakeholders, that what we needed mostly, of course, was to be perceived as an expert rather than being playful. We wanted also to be rebel, innovating. That's why boldness was our first values, because I know for people like us in this room, doing a matching platform can sound like something super easy and natural. But in the freight forwarding industry, where with all these people who work daily on the phone, having a digital platform and saying them, "Hey guy, what you do usually in 1 week to find a freight, you will just need 2 minutes in our platform," it's just crazy for them. So when we talk about being innovating, we are talking about disruption in this particularly word. We knew also that we had to be authority rather than friendly if we wanted to have credibility. And we knew also that we wanted to work with small as big companies. When you know all of this, you can know already what you won't do. For example, for Alan, you know, the insurance service. Alan, their audience are startups, so they can be playful, they can be fun, they can put so many emojis in their communication, and they can tell to their audience, "Hey guy, we won't answer to the phone, we do everything by chat." But in the freight forwarding industry, if you don't pick up your phone, no one will work with you. So this gave us so many information to the way we had to build our branding. And so we knew that we had to focus on boldness. By this we mean keeping our touch, keeping our personality, but in the same time without breaking up the trust. Because if we don't have the trust, no one will sign for the project. In simplicity, of course, but not simplicity in a startup eyes, simplicity for a professional of the freight forwarding industry. So now I knew all of this, I was able to start the design. And why doing all this work when you have only 3 weeks? Why not rushing on starting to do creation and looking out the competitors and starting to build something that could sound like obvious? Well, in fact, this is because this is my world. I really love rainbows, I really love glitters, I really love unicorns, llamas, pizzas, etc. So if you let me alone doing what I like in terms of branding, you can be sure that your project will look like this. But I'm not the user. So it was in fact pretty the same for the Convargo interface. I know that Jordan wanted to build a premium product, but finally when you start to look at your users, you can understand that maybe it wasn't the good way to see the branding we had to build. Maybe you have to start firstly with the user you are targeting or the customers you are targeting, and then only then you can start to run on creation. So I was super sad to not creating the new trends in terms of logo or a logo with a unicorn, but I had to be pragmatic. So instead of looking what was fashion in the world of the design, I thought, okay, I'm not the best maybe to build a logotype, but I know what works and what don't, and I know how to use it in a project interface or in marketing interfaces or print. So I started by study in the last century all the logotypes that were used to build all the logotypes in the universe of auto, motor car, etc., transportation. And I was looking for a graphic code, something super simple that I could reuse, because what I wanted on my logotype is that when our user will look at it, they will understand immediately that it was about transportation. So that's why this is the logotype. It's super simple. In fact, the mayonnaise that I did, I took Joséphine sans MS, so a font that looked like simple and bold, because this is the kind of font that you can find in the freight forwarding industry. And by the meantime, that could work in a digital interface, and I customed it, and I just add the wings, and it gave a logo. But it gave a logo that works, which means that a logo that works as in an interface, as in a header, as in a kakemono, or any print interface, like on an icon or a goodies, for example. So it's simple, it's basics. But in 3 weeks, it was enough for me to start working with that. And so I did the same thing with the colors. Instead of looking at the color that I like, I just tried to understand what was the freight industry. And when you look at all the pictures, when you go on the field, when you start to see what look like their environment, you see that so many same colors are popping in. And for example, the yellow was super interesting, because yellow is a guide. It's the color that you use for security. It's the color that you use for the roads. It's the color that pop in your face and say, hey, guy, come on, this is here that you have to do something. This is here that you don't have to go, etc. So I thought maybe this color is something that will be interpreted as in a connection with the freight forwarding industry. And also the colors, they have, you have an unconscious knowledge, unconscious psychology that touch every humans. So of course it's different regarding the country you are coming from. If you come from China, the red will be lucky and super positive colors. But if you come from Europe or I don't know, United States, etc., maybe the red can be interpreted as an alert or error button. So, of course, there is differences, but I knew that we were focused on the European market, and that I could use the colors with also a UX approach. So, for example, the trust is the color that most of humans in the world really loved. This is a super calm color, and this is super connected to trust. That's why you use it mostly on bank, insurance, on social media, Facebook, etc., BlaBlaCar, everything. When you want trust, you use the blue. And also about the yellow, when I looked at all the companies that are using it, I discovered that, for example, you have Shell, you have DHL, you have Ferrari, you have UPS, you have many companies in supply chain, logistic, or transportation that use this color. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm not in the so wrong direction. And I didn't want to throw away all that already existed, because if you try to throw away all what is on your product and you rethink entirely all the components, all the font, everything, it means that in terms of work, you will have so many things to change that it will not be possible. I needed to reuse what existed, and I needed to implement my new branding without breaking the existing user experience, because I knew that because I was alone and with so few resources, that it will take months and maybe years before changing all our product, all our platforms, everything. So I just took what existed, and they already used OpenSans, and OpenSans is a super interesting font when you want to build a platform in Europe, because you can use it in Polish, for example. You can use it in almost all European languages. So I keep the basis, and I just upgrade this. I throw away the green, because in terms of accessibility, this is maybe not the best color for our platform. And I rework on the hierarchy of colors, and I kept the same font, but with some more strong contrast. And I just added a second font only for the headings, just to reinforce the graphic codes of freight forwarding. And so once I had all of this, we were able to announce to the world that we were becoming Everoad. It was super easy to say. We have just the basic to build a banner, something like this, and make people believe that we were rebranding everything with a super huge agency. But then you have to deliver. And when you're not a brand designer, and you have to deliver new branding, and you have to rethink all your interfaces and all your print supports and everything in terms of marketing, well, this is the moment you hire someone who is better than you are. So I just hired, at this moment, Alison. She's in the room, if you want to talk with her after. And she's the one who built our branding after that. She took the bricks, she took these basics that I have bring, and she started to build our first branding by a little touch everywhere. And so here, this is not yet a system, but it starts to be something consistent, and you see that you start to build something with a personality. But we had to confront this with our users. Because we were in a rush, and because we had to announce our new name to the world in only 3 weeks, we didn't have the time to test our assumptions. And so in fact, we didn't know at all if all the issues that we had identified in terms of trust, in terms of reliability, in terms of accessibility, we didn't know if it worked. So we made a crash test with user test. We rebuilt our entirely our .com. And after this refund, we run user testing, and we asked to the people, what do you think about this website? And when you do this kind of user test, you can't wait someone saying, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful, I'm gonna die. They don't say that. They are freight forwarders, they don't care about graphism. But if they don't like, or if they don't believe in you, they will say you that this is shit. So they just looked at this, and we asked them, what do you think about it? And they say, well, nothing. It's a freight forwarding website. I mean, well, you work with shippers and carriers, and I can subscribe for free, and well, you work with all the really famous freight forwarders, and so what, you're like everyone else? No, you are a freight forwarder. And we're, wow, this is working. So we passed the test. And so now we have built this. Maybe we could have think that this is finished, this is done. We have a super good branding. But in fact, if you don't build a real system, every time you will have a new people coming in the company who like doing design but not following the rules. Every time you have a team that is growing up, well, you will have the same experience as the bot that Nicolas was showing earlier. That means that you have the first ingredients, but finally no one cares, and you have many inconsistency. So all what I did this first year was just the beginning. It was just the basis to brand an identity system. And the brand identity system, this is the law, this is the principle, this is all our values improve, this is all that you can use, all tools that you can use as design system. And in fact, the design system is just one of the tools that you can use for your entire brand identity. So this is just when you have this basis, here you can start to bring the way, bring the walls, bring the books, and here you can start to grow your team and make everyone working in consistency. So this is a step that we are currently working in. So maybe next year we'll come and say you, I made a mistake and I say bullshit during the talk, I don't know. But for the moment it works super good, so I hope it's gonna go on like this. And why I am saying all of this? I'm saying this because as head of design, I am convinced that project design is not enough. And I'm convinced that if I just focus on marketing design, I will make a promise that you won't find on the project. So in fact, for me, branding is about building a memorable relationship with your customers, which means that it begins with the first touch point that you have with your users. From the moment he's putting on Google's, I'm looking for a freight forwarding service, to the end of his experience with the project. So in conclusion, if you want to build a brand identity system, I will suggest you that start with knowing your audience, because you can do great things, you can build super beautiful interfaces. If it don't fit with your audience, it won't be useful. And then define your DNA, know yourself. And once you have done this, and once you try to build a scalable system, you can stay lean and scale on it. Here you can try to build something memorable. So, of course, I did nothing alone. It's my team who did everything. I was just for the visions and looking at them working. So merci to Alison, Gauthier, Romain, Charlotte. And that's it. Thanks. Do you have any questions? Okay. Yes. I don't know if I give you
Did you come up with the name Everoad yourself as part of the branding process, or did they already have that in mind? Just wondering how you came up with it, if you did.
About the naming, yes, I forgot this. Thanks to Nomen, this is an agency. In fact, I discovered during this experience that naming is a job. And because you have to be conform with the law in regarding the country, in the markets that you are targeting, the law is super different. In some countries, you have to build a certificate, pay for certifications, things like this. So you need a lawyer if you want a name that will work in all around Europe. So a professional did that, and they are the responsible of Everoad. Nomen, the agency. Well, it depends. In fact, for the components, we have a workflow. So we try to build a design system which is super lean. So we started with just the button and the inputs, and we are bringing step-by-step new components. So for the moment, all the interfaces that are on our project are not done with our design system. We are updating it step by step. And every time we had a component in the design system, we had to follow a workflow with a UX approach, which means that we make research to see, I don't know, if you have a checkbox, a radio button, when do you use one or the other, how do you use it, etc. And then we make validation with our lead dev front, with me, with the designer who is the referent of the design system, and also during this workflow, we're testing it on the platform, which means that we try it on many screens. It can sound a bit huge because it means that for every component we have this entire workflow, but in fact this is because if you don't do that, that, you bring you bring component and you implemented it on your interface, and then you see that it didn't work, and then you have to change what is on the design system and what is in the platform, etc. So we try to have the minimum. We work in MVP, in fact, in the design system. We have the minimum, it grows iteration per iteration, but every time we add something in it, we are sure of what we are adding.
You said that you had like 3 weeks to do this, which obviously isn't much time at all. But how often, or did you check in at all with like the sort of senior people in the company about how they thought the evolution of the brand was going, or was it kind of like this is how it's going to be? How did you kind of handle that?
So in fact, all the stakeholders were involved, and at this moment, it was the bigger part of the company because we were super tiny. So they saw all the work I've done, and we validated everything. But for just the basis, so just the first colors, etc., the stakeholders were involved, and then we did an offsite, and I approved this offsite to test this solution with everyone. So we announced it to the company, hey, we are working on it, and what do you think about that? And we tried to involve them. People liked it. Some made me some feedbacks, but in the globality, it was everyone validated it. But I think this is because I had the argument, and in fact, this is Nicolas Duval who made the presentation. When I was working in my precedent job in PrestaShop, I was working on UIKit, and Nicolas told me, when you are building system, you have to be a Nazi. It means that you cannot move. You have to be sure of your arguments, because everyone will try to change what you are building. So you have to be sure of the color you choose, the border radius you choose, the shadow that you choose. So this is why we are following a UX workflow to build our component or anything in terms of graphic. And so when someone in the company is not okay and say, hey, I don't like these interfaces, on my side, it's not about liking or not, because you saw I like rainbows. So what I do is being pragmatic. And when you have this approach, most of the people, they just follow you because they think, okay, she knows what she's doing, she tested it, so it's okay. Ok, merci tout le monde.
Merci.